I just pressed the let's go live button, so we gotta wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. We gotta make sure the tubes are working. And it looks like they're connecting. We've got the YouTubes, the Rumble tubes, the Twitter tubes, and of course, the locals tubes. And we are live. That's great news because we've got a lot of business to attend to. And so, oh my goodness, my mind map is out of control. Wow, very disorderly here to start the show out. I thought I had that situated. But evidently not. Now it's ready to go. Let's do it, my friends, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about Sidney Powell pleading guilty. Yeah, that's right. Big Fani Willis in her Georgia court has a guilty plea, and this one's a pretty big one. We've talked about this case a lot, and this one was ready to go for trial. In fact, we were waiting for this one. We were going to start covering this one starting tomorrow and then into next week, but there's not going to be a Sidney Powell trial because she has pled guilty. Now, some people in the media are doing cartwheels over this. They're saying, oh, yeah, one of the lead insurrectionists, one of the lead conspirators who was a part of the Trump team has pleaded guilty, and it's a big deal. When, you know what? Honestly, I don't think so, my friends. We're going to go through it in detail. Look at this mind map action we've got going on. I got kind of excited about it today. And what we've done here is we've got the actual documents that hit today, including the waiver. So what happened was she got originally indicted. So they are dropping those other original charges, and they're hitting her with a new set of charges, and she's pleading guilty to the new set of charges. And so I want to compare and contrast these things, right? I want to show what Big Fani came in with and go through the original charges, which were pretty serious, you know, all felonies and involving things like conspiracy to commit computer theft and conspiracy to commit trespass and all the different things. But then when we fast forward to the guilty plea today, what do we see? Oh, they're all misdemeanors. Isn't that convenient? Big Fani. So you overcharged, didn't you? You knew that this was a crap case, which is why you offered her a smoking plea deal at the last minute. And the plea deal was so probably quickly done that they just used a regular old form for it. All right. They used a regular old form, the same thing that they probably give, you know, to disorderly conduct cases. They just filled it out, sign it and shove it through. I can't wait to go through it. It's just hilarious. So we're going to get into all of that and break down what exactly happened with Sidney Powell in the court document stuff. But then we've also got the actual court proceeding. I want to run through it. It's about 15 to 20 minutes, I think. It's the full proceeding. And, you know, there's a portion of change of pleas proceedings that is called your factual basis. It's where they will read into the record the facts of your guilt. And I want to pay close attention to and listen to it because I want to see whether or not the magic word comes up. And you can play along at home all day today. The magic word when we're talking about Sidney Powell is Donald Trump, to see if his name shows up in any of these charges, or if any of it implicates him in any way. I don't even know. I haven't looked through it yet. We're going to look through it together, and so we'll keep our eye out. Sidney Powell is going to be alleged and pleading guilty to all this different conduct, but so what? What does it have to do with Donald Trump? We'll see. Maybe it's there. Maybe his name's all inside of it. I really don't know. It could be. I really don't know. We'll see. So we've got that, but before we get into some of that heavy lifting stuff, what we're going to do is see what's going on with our so-called leaders in Congress, our Republican leadership. And what they're going to be doing is really fighting amongst themselves, and it's, you know, wild what's happening. But we'll go through it because they are coming after Matt Gaetz right now. Matt Gaetz, of course, is the person who led the removal of Kevin McCarthy, and now the House seems to be in quite a state of disarray. And so we're going to check in and see what happened here. I've got all these clips that we're piecing together this narrative that is kind of interesting, right? They're all making their interesting statements, and I found a common thread. The common thread is they're not happy with Matt Gaetz, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and the senator over from Markwayne Mullins. And so it feels to me, we talked about this on our members-only stream this morning, it feels to me Like they are just setting this all up to shove Kev right back in. I'm serious. And we'll go through the segment and you can tell me what you think when we get to the end of it. But boy, oh boy. So we're going to hear from Kevin. He's just ripping into Gaetz. Marjorie Taylor Greene is ripping into Gaetz. Mullin is. And even Pelosi is going to make the show today. So we'll see what she has to say about it. And we've got some clips from Matt Gaetz in response to all of it. And so, my friends, as you can see, we have got a lot to get to today, and we do not have a sponsor on this live stream for today, which is why we're grateful for you to join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we will see you at our members-only after party, and our members-only morning streams, so we can catch you there. We are going to have, though, today, I forgot to mention this, we are going to have some live stream privilege insertions, all right? So we've done this before. So when I go through this segment, we're going to just skip over an ad, right? I'll just say, I'll just pause for it and we'll skip right over it. It's live stream privilege. And then when we cut the segments, we'll insert the ad later. So if you're wondering what's going on, that's what that is. But we do appreciate you joining us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Sponsors come, sponsors go, they change. And so we're always grateful to our members for always being there, and we're really working on some cool stuff for our members, and I can't wait to share more of it with you. You can also check out our website now. robertgovea.com now has the PDFs there, so when you go over there, you can sign up for the daily newsletter so you get everything delivered to your inbox. But the reports, if there's a document in it, like this Trump appeals the Chuck and gag order, let's see, oh, we got the documents on the website. Ooh, that's what I'm talking about, baby. Shout out to the team. It's working, baby. The system is working. And so look at all these documents there. So if you want to download anything or dig into what we talk about further, robertgovea.com. You can watch the full video. You can read a summary of what's happening there. And then all of our documents are now on our Scribed account. And we're making a record, man. We're marking this into the history books, all of this stuff. And it's on our website. It's on a nice, secure server that shouldn't be canceling us. Okay, so, it's there. And we're building this for the ages. And so thank you for joining us as we do. Now, let's get into it, my friends, because we do have some business to attend to. And here is what we have. Let me move that out of the way. The House of Representatives continues to be in disarray, and as our so-called leadership continues to duke it out, it becomes pretty clear they're coming after one guy, Matt Gaetz, and we're going to hear from him. Amongst others, we've got Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senator Markwayne Mullins, who are all kind of turning their attention over to one person. And we need a scapegoat here because it feels very foolish what's happening. We've got two factions in the Republican Party that just can't come to an agreement, and the agreement would be upon the next speaker. And the real question is, why not Jim Jordan? Right? A lot of people are pretty excited about Jim Jordan. Kevin McCarthy endorsed Jim Jordan. Thomas Massie endorsed Jim Jordan. Donald Trump endorsed Jim Jordan. But they still can't figure out why he is not the best speaker, and there's disarray, and he's not there. But they are asking Jordan, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to fight? And he said, absolutely, I am. In fact, here is what he said. I'm staying in the race.
At this moment,
so I'll just say this. We made the pitch to members on the resolution as a way to lower the temperature and get back to work. We decided that wasn't where we're going to go. I'm still running for speaker, and I plan to go to the floor and get the votes and win this race. But I want to go talk with a few of my colleagues. Particularly, I want to talk with the 20 individuals who voted against me so that we can move forward and begin to work for the American people.
All right, so Jim Jordan staying in, and we're going to see if he can rally more to his side, because currently that's not happening. Currently, every time there's a vote, it seems like he loses support, and the question is why. One reason might be because Kevin McCarthy and others are the next in line, right? They're just saying that Jordan is not going to get it, and Kev should be put back into place. But Kev is now having to reorient his Republican friends against the person who took him out of the position. That person is Matt Gaetz. And so we're going to hear what Kevin says about Matt Gaetz. But before we get into it, a quick message from those who support our show here. Live stream privilege exercised. And now, This is Kevin McCarthy lacing into Matt Gaetz, and you can hear from him. He says that Matt Gaetz is to blame for all of this House chaos.
Can you explain specifically what happened with Matt Gaetz? Did you yell
Oh,
at him?
no. I was at the mic, I was speaking,
you
and
yell
Matt
at
Gaetz
Matt?
tried to interrupt, and so I told him to sit down, and he sat down.
What's your view?
I think
At
it,
him?
no, I told him to sit down. I think the entire conference screamed at him. People are, listen, the whole country, I think, would scream at Matt Gaetz right now. Remember, it was a crazy eights led by Matt Gaetz and every single Democrat that put us into this situation.
Knives are out.
We've never been in this situation before. But how do you have 4% of your conference remove a speaker when 96% are there? This is why we're here. He had no plan afterwards. Now we have Israel at a war, questions whether Congress can act, questions where we'd be able to go to select a new speaker. I mean, it's a difficult situation driven by one person for his own personal beliefs, his own animosity towards me, and his concern about what's inside an ethics complaint that was filed before I was even speaker.
Oh,
What
brutal.
what is the support for the McHenry resolution to give him more powers, and would you need Democrats to come and help you?
Well, the question in there, we'd like to have all Republicans, but they get into the bunch of legal minds, whether they're or not. I just think we need to make sure government still runs. And I think we should be having a resolution on the floor in support of Israel. I have a 5-point plan to support Israel, but the question right now is you can't do anything until you elect a speaker, and apparently there's not enough votes to elect a speaker.
Should Jim Jordan step down?
Look, it took me 15 times to win, so I don't question when someone keeps have the opportunity. Look, when I put McHenry's name down, it was my belief that if something happened to me, that McHenry could run the floor until we elected a new speaker. It was not my intention when I put a name down that they couldn't do anything, so why would you put a name down? When the president decides on a State of the Union who his designated survivor is, I think it's he or her intention that if something happens to everyone else, that person could carry on the continuity of government. If we provided these rules after 9/11, I believe it was the intent of Congress for that same reason to put a name down, and you put a number of names, that person could carry on the job if you fail to not be able to do the job.
So McCarthy lacing into Gaetz pretty aggressively there. And what he was talking about was some backroom deal, which is obviously very concerning. One of the most troubling and problematic features of this whole debacle is what is happening behind closed doors. And I know many of you are as concerned as I am about the investigations. The Oversight Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, and the Judiciary Committee, they were all on the track, man. They were chewing down the road and making some good progress. I know we were getting letters out, but we were having hearings. I mean, we were really getting some momentum. And my concern has always been, what is the future of each of those investigations and each of those committees now that all this transacting is happening behind closed doors in Congress? So in one of those closed door sessions, Kevin and Gaetz were having a conversation. Obviously, you heard from Kev say, I screamed at him. I think that most of America would scream at him. I'm not so sure about that. But here is what Gaetz says when he was asked about it. He said, yeah, old Kev's got a bit of a temper over there.
First of all, how was it in there? Did McCarthy scream at you?
Well, he loses his temper sometime. Maybe it's the Irish in him. But I actually think it was a really productive discussion. People got to get their viewpoint out. And what I'm really happy about is that this did not end with a desire to have Speaker light or a ratified Speaker pro tem. It's our obligation to elect a Speaker, and I'm glad that we were able to throw cold water on Speaker light as a governing concept.
Is the resolution dead though?
It's not going to. I don't think it's going to be offered by Republicans as a consequence of our discussion.
Do you know how the conference is planning to move forward at this point?
I think we're going to have another Jim Jordan vote. I can't wait to a vote.
Today or when?
Today.
Thank you.
All right. So they're still debating as to whether Jim Jordan is going to be the speaker. And let's see if there is any activity that's happening right now live as we speak, if they are back in session over on C-SPAN, and they are not. So just to be clear, we're watching to see if they're in session here. We're not seeing that they're in session. So apparently not back in for a vote as of this moment. But that was Matt Gaetz. And the real question that he's getting a lot of is, are you happy with this situation? Do you see what you've done here, Mr. Gaetz? Look around. This is chaos. Can you please explain why you think you are allowed to do this to all of us?
Out of this, you may not get Jim Jordan as speaker. You may get someone more moderate. What did you actually get for leading this charge to push out Kevin McCarthy?
We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever. And you know what? It's messy. But the only reason people think there's chaos in this town right now is because the special interests aren't in control anymore. So I think we're going to have an upgrade at the position of Speaker of the House. For me, it was never about any one person. It was about ensuring that we got an upgrade at the position. Kevin McCarthy had failed us. He'd made multiple contradictory promises. We weren't really governing under McCarthy. Everybody's making this big deal out of the fact that we've burnt the equivalent of 4 legislative days on all of this. But I mean, we've spent like 7 legislative days on post offices and procedural votes, for goodness sakes. This is what it's supposed to be. And it's not clean and it's not orderly. And the lobbyists and the special interests hate it. But I don't seem to mind too much.
Matt Gaetz is cool with it. And there's a good point to this. I think that there is an argument from his side. I mean, we have been gaming this out for a while now. And the big concern was that, sure, you lose a McCarthy, you get a Jordan, but in order to bring over guys like Ken Buck or something, Jordan has to make a sacrifice, like giving up the Biden investigation or something, but Jordan would still move into play, right? Like there would be some sort of negotiation, as there always is, and then Jordan would still be moved into pocket. But that's not happening right now. We have what sounded like some part of the Republicans, like at least a third of the Republican caucus, was willing to go over and join the Democrats. And in joining the Democrats, they would have voted for this pseudo pro tem speaker in McHenry, who then would have, I don't know, given what to the Democrats. So I don't really know what's happening behind closed doors, and that's what's so disgusting about all of this, obviously. But I do know this. If the Democrats are happy with somebody, then I generally am not. And if the Democrats are not happy with somebody, then I tend to be more likely to be in favor of that person. Not always, but generally. But the point is, why now would that one subset of the House Republicans that would rather have McHenry and join the Democrats, why would they rather do that than join with Jim Jordan? Like, what is the stalemate here? What is the roadblock? And we're pretty early in this. It took Kev 15 times. So why don't you just keep hammering this? Just try it again. All right, you don't want to do it? You don't want to vote for Jordan? All right, again, another one. Another one? Again. What time is it? It's 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Just get in there and just keep hammering it until somebody comes out as the speaker. That's it. But I don't know what is happening behind these closed doors and why that is not happening. But I do know that people seem to be dogpiling on Gaetz. In fact, here's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who seems to be joining in on the fray.
I do not support this plan. Republican voters worked too hard to give us the majority for us to enter some sort of temporary speakership. Our conference has a responsibility to the American people, to our districts, to work together and unify. And this conference is absolutely broken. And the reason why we're broken is because Republicans worked with Democrats and put us here. It's outrageous. We have serious issues happening in our country. Terrorists have come across our border. War is breaking out in Israel. War is continuing in Ukraine. The economy is getting worse and worse, and inflation is crushing everyone's ability to afford to live. This is the most disappointing thing, and it has to change.
Are you disappointed to see Mr. Jordan supporting this idea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so she's talking about the Patrick McHenry deal that Jim Jordan even was supporting, and so she's against that deal.
We voted for him to be our speaker nominee. We only had 2 votes. I wanted to see it keep going today and find a way to work with the holdouts to get together so that we can continue doing our work. And I don't know why this is happening, so I'm very disappointed.
Did Mr. Jordan present the plan today, and will there not be a vote on his speaker?
He wants to move with a resolution to empower Patrick McHenry as some sort of a short-term speaker. I think that's the wrong thing to do. He wants to do that while he continues talking to people and finding a path. I completely disagree. I think that we should all be able to find a path in that room right there, and that requires putting the egos down. It requires humility. It requires the 8 Republicans that work with Democrats to put us here asking for forgiveness in the conference and people giving forgiveness
That's
and us
Gaetz.
moving forward. This is not a plan for a strong majority.
No speaker vote today?
It's a resolution.
What's wrong with it as a temporary solution, though? What's wrong with just giving McHenry temporary more power just to get back in business?
I just stated all of that. I just stated it. It's
Yeah,
just not
dummy.
the right
So
thing
the
to do.
resolution vote will be today?
Supposedly. Yeah.
All right, so Marjorie, she says that Matt Gaetz,
Find a path.
Matt Gaetz and those 8 Republicans, they better come back in on their knees, begging and groveling for acceptance back into our caucus. Ooh, wow. And I don't know how that's going to work out so well. I don't think that's how that's going to go. All right, so that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's a little bit of a surprise from her. All right, but not really, because we remember when she was like skipping and prancing around Congress, like with her arms in Kev's, little, their elbows were locked and they were like prancing around Congress, like, here's to continuing resolutions as we wreck America. And they were like frolicking like lovebirds or something. It was a strange thing. But she is now coming out against Gaetz, and that might be because she's back on McCarthy's side. Now, over in the Senate, you've got this guy, Markwayne Mullins. He's a Republican over from Oklahoma. He's also blaming Gaetz, and so it crosses the congressional houses.
This was absolutely reckless on Matt Gaetz on leading this self-promotion for himself instead of the country. This was nothing about policy. This was nothing about principle. This had something to do with Matt Gaetz wanting to promote himself, and he literally has put us in a disarray at a time that we should be united as not just a country, but definitely as Republicans on standing up against the squad and their bias towards Israel.
Yeah. All right, Senator.
All right, so everybody's got some knives out for Matt Gaetz. And Matt Gaetz is going to explain why this is at a stalemate. He's got a good question here. But one person is very happy that Jim Jordan is not in the speaker's seat. It happens to be the former speaker. And her reasoning for this is exactly what you'd expect. Jordan is, as we all know, an insurrectionist.
Just curious, what is your reaction to another failed speaker vote with the Republicans?
Well, I think it was a triumph for democracy in our country that an insurrectionist was rejected by the Republicans again as their candidate for speaker. We've always wished the winning party well as they choose their leader.
But
I've never, in the decades that I've been here, when we've had a speaker's race on our side or their side, we've always respected each other's judgment. But today and yesterday, that was an assault on our democracy, as Jim Jordan assaulted our democracy on January 6th.
Did you hear what she just said? She said that the votes for Jim Jordan were an attack on our democracy, just like Jim Jordan's attack on our democracy was when he attacked our democracy back on January 6th. It's unbelievable. All right, here, we'll finish it, and then I want to hit that again.
Have you as a conference at all discussed expanding Speaker Pro Tem McHenry's
You'll have to
powers?
talk to Hakeem about that. He's our leader, and he speaks for us.
But you've
All right, yeah. Is she hammered? What's in her hand there? Is that a bottle of whiskey? All right, here. It's an insurrection, man.
The winning party well as they choose their leader. I've never, in the decades that I've been here, when we've had a speaker's race on our side or their side, we've always respected each other's judgment. But today and yesterday, that was an assault on our democracy, as Jim Jordan assaulted our democracy on January 6th.
We have psychos in our government. It's just unreal. It's just unreal. All right, so the Republicans going through the process of voting, which is just voting. It's voting in Congress. Like, it's not a big deal. There's a formal process. They're following rules. That's an insurrection. Everything's an insurrection here. Somebody cut her off in the parking lot. Insurrection. It's just never ending. All right. So Matt Gaetz wraps this up. He says, look, I know it's a little chaotic out there. I know it's kind of confusing for a lot of people. I know Nancy Pelosi still thinks she's under attack. But this is not that complicated, all right? We need to know why don't these so-called moderates, these so-called Republicans, why don't they get in line behind Jordan? He's a pretty reasonable candidate, to be perfectly fair on this one. He was straddling both sides of this thing for a long time. He was doing Kevin stuff, but he was doing judiciary stuff. He had the mainstream moderate wing of the Republican Party and the right with all the Biden, inquisition. But why can't that side come and join the right? Okay, we tried it with moderate Kev. Give us Jordan. Here's Matt Gaetz.
Congressman, is the resolution to empower McHenry dead at this point?
Yeah, it won't be offered by Republicans based on Speaker-designate Jordan's announcement just moments ago, and I think that's a good thing. The House of Representatives needs a speaker, not a speaker light. I don't support using temporary powers for Mr. McHenry, and I'm glad that our arguments seem to be persuasive to our colleagues.
But Jordan seemed to back this as his next strategy to give himself the time to cobble together more votes. I mean, this is something he's backed.
Well, I like Jim Jordan. I'm voting for Jim Jordan, but I don't agree with him on every subject. And I certainly don't agree that what would be best for the House of Representatives is a temporary speaker pro tem. I think we need to elect a speaker. I think we've got great folks in our conference. I think Jim Jordan sits atop that list, and I look forward to voting for him again today.
And one last question for you, because we are live here right now. How icy was it for you in that room? I heard it got pretty intense.
Well, I'm not for everyone, as it turns out, and I have my detractors, but I'm an attorney by trade. I don't get emotional about the presentation of arguments and listening to other people's arguments. It doesn't affect how I think about people. I was there to make the substantive argument that Speaker Light is a bad idea, just like Bud Light. But I far prefer us to continue having votes going forward. And, when I held out with Speaker McCarthy, we had goals. We had specific things we were fighting for. I think a reasonable question to those that are holding out and not voting for Jordan is, what are you fighting for?
Yes.
What are your goals? What are your objectives here other than just recalcitrance?
What do you guys want? What do the moderate people want? We don't know. Ken Buck comes out, he complains about the judiciary investigating the DOJ. A lot of them say that the DOJ is just very incredible and that there's no reason to continue to ask questions about their legitimacy. But what is it specifically? Bring it to the forefront. At the very minimum, they should tell us what these issues are. Why will they not join and line up behind Jordan? All right. The Gaetz crowd, they tried it with Kev. Didn't work out. So come on board on the Jordan train. My friends, we'll continue to cover this. Thank you for checking out robertgovea.com, our website, to sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll get all this stuff delivered to your inbox, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Now, that is what's happening in the House of Representatives. Now we're turning our attention over to Georgia because, man, you can see, look at this mind map. We've got some serious jumping around to do, but we're going to see if we can parse it all together here because we got some docs to go through, and this is a big one. Fani Willis, the biggest Fani in Georgia, dismisses the felony counts against Sidney Powell. You remember Sidney Powell. We talked a lot about her in the aftermath of the 2020 election. She was fighting for Donald Trump and America to show the world what a joke the entire operation was, meaning the election. But today, she took a guilty plea, and a lot of people on the left are going, oh, see, we told you so. She was a conspirator. She was an insurrectionist or whatever, and we're going to take a look at the actual charges because it is not really that. It's much different than what the original charges said and the original allegations alleged. And so we're going to go through all of it today and jump into the actual documents, including the actual plea of guilty form that Sidney Powell signed, and learn about what the violations that she pled guilty to mean. But first, here was a waiver, and I wanted to start here by explaining that she got charged originally in a monster RICO indictment. You can see count 1 was hers, and 32 through 37 were hers, all part of the monster indictment, right? Massive pages, listed a bunch of other co-defendants and so on. But what they've done is they've allowed that essentially to be dismissed, and they're replacing it with a new set of charges that we'll talk and learn more about in a minute. But this is the document that allows all of that to happen. This is what's called the waiver. And so you see this here. It says, this case is not involving a capital felony. I waive my indictment by a grand jury, and I instead allow the district, so Fani, to charge me under the Georgia law. I understand that I may enter a plea and be tried on this accusation according to the same rules as others who have been indicted by a grand jury. All right, so normally when you're charged with a crime, you get indicted or there's a direct complaint filed. But here, she would have been indicted, and that didn't happen. She just agrees, okay, just bring those charges. Why? Because she's going to be pleading guilty. So this is substituting the old in for the new, and we'll learn what the new charges are. But you can see right here, 19th day of October, Sidney Powell signs off on this thing, and a lot of people going, oh, this means Trump is done. Well, we'll explain why I don't think that's the case at all. And so we'll continue on. We're going to look at how to compare and contrast these two sets of charges. But first, I want to say thank you to the sponsor of this segment, our friends. And now let's dive into the comparison between the old charges and the new charges. The original RICO charges, as you can see, we're going to fast forward through it. It was a monster document, and we have it pulled up right here. And you can see, look at all these names. Look at all these different charges. And remember that Sidney Powell was right here. Counts 1 and 32 through 37. So the big one that brought this whole thing was count 1. Remember this one? Violation of RICO, the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. Wow. Hopefully she got found guilty of that one, right? We'll see. But the others were 32 through 37. And you remember all of these. Conspiracy to commit election fraud. And we're going to go through this in more detail, but just keep mental notes on these various Georgia statutes. Right now we're in 21-2603, 21-2603, 21-2574. They're going to change a little bit because the charges change. Conspiracy to commit election fraud, computer theft, conspiracy to commit computer trespass, invasion of privacy, and conspiracy to defraud the state, right? These were all of the original charges for Sidney Powell. And if you're following along at home, and I hope you are, as we go through all of this, we're asking ourselves this thematic question: how do these relate back to Donald Trump? Because on the left, they're going to say Sidney Powell pled guilty, and that means that all of this is like the domino that just falls right into Donald Trump. And that means he's guilty too. But does this conduct, these overt acts, all of these things, do they actually relate back to Donald Trump? And if Sidney Powell testifies, can she testify in a manner that is in alignment with her pleading guilty? In other words, she can talk about being guilty of certain conduct, but being guilty of that conduct does not translate over to Trump. And if we're Kamala Harris, we're using Venn diagrams here, they don't overlap. Okay, Sidney Powell's plea deal is in one circle, and her conduct and her criminality is in one circle, and all of the Trump allegations are in another circle. Can we keep them separated? So in the original indictment, we're going to see this, right? These were all of the various charges, and there's a ton of them. And so they give us all of these overt acts, right? And this whole thing was kind of a big joke and a scam, as we know. But we'll fast forward down just until we get to the actual counts. Now, when we scroll back up to count 1, I want to just show you inside the document so you can see how all this stuff works. But inside count 1, we're going to notice that it is the big RICO charge. Okay, this goes to everybody in the underlying indictment. That's count 2. So let's go all the way back up. Well, count 1 is all the way at the very top. So, oh my gosh, here, let me save us all the fast forwarding here. Right? This is count 1. On count 1 of 41, they say that all of these people under count 1, we'll see if Sidney Powell continues to be pleading guilty to that. But here, this is the name Donald Trump. This is the old indictment. So you'd say, oh, okay, they're connected, right? You can say bingo at home, or you can say MAGA or something. If you see Donald Trump and a connection. So Sidney Powell and Donald Trump, they're connected under count 1. See how that works? This is the old one. But in violation of the Racketeer Influence and Corruption or Corrupt Organizations Act, blah, blah, blah. They say between these dates, all of the people were involved in a conspiracy to violate Georgia law and do all of the following things, right? Starting with Donald Trump. He's the first co-defendant, and he's the first person listed at the top of count 1. So that's him. Now, we'll scroll all the way back down to the other counts. That was Sidney Powell's first count. So let's save ourselves the seizure flashing of the screen. And then scroll back down to 32 and 30 through 37. And we're going to be playing along at home. Do you see Donald Trump in these counts? And these were the original counts. So again, as grand jurors here, we find that Sidney Powell and others, Kathleen Latham, Scott Graham Hall and Misty Hampson with this offense, right? And here this was involving tampering with electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines. And here, Sidney Powell entered into a contract with Sullivan Strickler and delivered payment, and they tampered with this, and so on. But you'll notice, okay, and if I'm wrong, if I miss this, right, sometimes I get tunnel vision and I go fast. But if I'm missing a Donald Trump connection, somebody smack me digitally. But I don't see it on that one. Here we've got this one, count 33. Sidney Powell, Kathleen, conspiracy, right? So in other words, without RICO, without that first one, none of this stuff is going to matter. And we're going to see if that is charged in this new set. Here's count 33. Again, Sidney Powell, it's the same people. It's also Sullivan Strickler for the same type of conduct. We go on. Count 34. No Trumps here. It's the same set of conduct. It's just a little different permutation of a crime. And these are all serious crimes, okay? These are felonies. Commit computer theft. Whoa. That's a big deal. And it's Powell, it's Latham, it's Graham Hall, it's Misty Hampton, the same thing. They're all permutations of the same thing, right? And we saw this with Michael Cohen. And just to be, just to kind of zoom out on this whole thing for a while, when you have these types of crimes, they'll charge you for everything. So let's say that subscribing to Netflix was illegal, right? Let's just say hypothetically it was. Well, they would charge you with the crime for like visiting the website, like solicitation. Then they would actually for signing up, right? Maybe illegal contract, trafficking in illegal goods, whatever they'd come up with across state lines, wherever they're looking, whatever. Right? And then every single transaction, every monthly recurring thing, you'd get an invoice. That would be a crime for from Netflix for, from sending you a bill for an illegal service. And then you'd pay it. And then that would be an illegal payment, and everything, felony, 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 every month, right? That type of thing. So here it's the same thing. So they're saying that, they signed a contract, then they paid for it, then they entered into an agreement, then they were going to do all the things. Here's count 35. Unlawfully conspired to use it. Okay, so they hired them, then they were going to go get it, then they were going to use it after they got it. Wow. Count 36. But again, these are all felonies, right? Invasion of computer privacy. Then they were going to use a computer to examine voter data, which is a separate crime. So they were going to get it, then they were going to use it, then they were going to use it to access voter data, which is another crime. And then 37, the final count for Sidney and the rest of these people, is to commit theft of voter data, which is a separate crime, right? So it's all very, very closely related to just one set of circumstances, like one contract. They sign it, they pay for it, they plan it, then they pick it up, then they use it, and in the use of it, it involved other things, and so criminal every single time, right? But look, and hopefully I didn't miss anything, but we're done with all the original counts. 37 is now done, and we still see the same people. Not a single one involving Donald Trump, right? Now, what's curious about this is that would be a total of 7 counts. 6 counts, right? The original 6 counts. So 32... No, it's 7 counts, yeah. So it's 7 counts. So 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37 plus 1 is originally a total of 7 counts. Now something happened. We have shifted. Now the new plea deal is 6 counts. Oh, weird. And they're different counts as well, as we're going to show. So take a look here. And actually, let's just put these side by side so we can just see the different numbers. Yes, okay. So here, now this is old. So this is the old counts, and these are the new counts. And if you just match the two numbers up, they're totally different statutes and totally different crimes. So 21-2-597, as we can see here, is a misdemeanor count. And this is the one that has replaced all of the original charges. All right, just so we can see. 21-2-597 is the second half of each one of these new counts. So it's 16-4-8. It's 6 counts of the same type of crime. 16-4-8, 21-2-597, all the way down, times 6. So it's the same thing times 6. And the official crime is conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties. And the 16-4-8 is a just generic conspiracy charge, right? That's it. It's just like any type of conspiracy. It says a person commits the offense of conspiracy when together with one or more persons, any overt act to affect the object of the conspiracy. And here it says some of the penalties, which we'll fast forward through because the judge sentenced her. So that's just the one. It's a generic conspiracy, can apply to basically anything for whatever. This is the actual charge. Okay, now this is the misdemeanor election interference charge, and it is a misdemeanor. You can see it's 21-2597. It says a person who intentionally interferes with, hinders, or delays, or attempts to interfere, right? It could even be an attempt, so not actual, to interfere with, hinder, or delay, or otherwise in the performance of an act, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So, what we have now are 7 felonies that have all been turned into misdemeanors, and one of them has been dismissed. Because you'll notice this count, the RICO Act, which is the only one in the original indictment that connected Sidney Powell to Donald Trump, she has not pleaded guilty to that. She's pleading guilty to a subset of crimes that, as far as we're going to hear, right, I don't know that there's any connection to Trump based on the actual charging document. It might have to do with her conduct, but not Trump's. So we'll see what is inside of it. Now, that was the original, that was the waiver, and now let's see what the inside of the document looks like, as well as this ridiculous plea form. Here we have the guilty plea proceeding. Now, let's start with the actual new document. So as I explained, they have gotten rid of the old charges. Why? Well, in my opinion, it's because they couldn't prove those. Because they were much more serious charges, and they didn't have the evidence, they didn't have the facts, they didn't have the witnesses. They couldn't get it cobbled together in time. They didn't want to try the case so that Trump could see what's coming, or they would have fallen on their face. Generally speaking, last-minute plea deals, in my experience, they're either one of two things, okay? Either the government's case is very strong and your defendant just kind of cops, okay? You're representing somebody and they're like, we're going to go to trial. And all right, man, the evidence is pretty bad about you. Are you sure you want to do that? They've got like 10 witnesses and they all say you did it plus the camera. I want to go to trial. All right, let's go. We prepare for trial. Day before trial, client calls. Guess what? Anything you can do to get that original plea deal back? Probably not, but let me try. Let me go figure it out and you see what you can do. Then you say, all right, my cops are still showing up tomorrow, but if you want to take a plea deal, I'll be there tomorrow. Or, if you can get it done, like the day before trial, you're probably not getting a good plea deal because the cops are showing up and everybody's prepared. But like a week before trial, yeah, maybe you can get the old plea deal back and people will sort of, take a plea deal. Or the other situation is when the government really has a bad case, like really bad, and they come in scrambling at the last minute. And I've had this happen many times. When you're coming in and they suddenly, your jail plea deal, they're like, oh, we'll give you 30 days in jail. 48 hours before trial, is your client entertaining a plea deal? I staffed this with my supervisor, right? My boss prosecutor. I staffed this with them and they said that we can offer your client 15 days, but he has to pay a higher fine. Would he be willing to take that? No, get out of here. We'll see you in court. Okay, then the day before trial. Hey, just want to make sure that you're prepared for trial tomorrow. I've got my officers coming tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Then you might show up the day of, like literally the day of, and they'll say, hey, look, my witness is not going to be here. Or maybe they won't even say that. They'll just say, listen, will your guy take a probation deal? Okay, I'm here. We wanted 30 days or 6 months or whatever. Will he take a probation deal? And then at that point, you got to make a decision. You got to say, all right, look, we might be able to go and win this. And I've told the story, I think, for our members of where I did that once, right? They gave me a smoking deal on a domestic violence case. They botched the statute of limitations and they were giving us like everything we wanted, but we pushed it and got the dismissal because we knew that they didn't have what they needed. So the point is, right, if they know, if their case is very weak, then they will come at the last minute and come skidding in there and start throwing stuff at you to try to get you to take it, because there is always a possibility that even if their case is weak, there's always a possibility that you just get a bad something, right? So if you can limit some of the externalities and take a deal that you know is certain, you'll do that, especially if the government is going to be giving you a ridiculous smoking deal like this one, where every single felony is dismissed, and the top line item, the big one that connected her to Trump, is not there. And the reason why I think they cobbled this together very quickly is because of this form, all right? This is the plea deal. Oh, it's too funny. Okay, so my friends, I've helped execute many plea deals, and when I was practicing with my law firm, we've done thousands of plea deals. And these plea deals, you know, are generally like this, okay? They're all forms. It's very quick in courts, in criminal courts. It happens rapidly. You go in there, you get charged with a domestic, or let's say a disorderly conduct charge when you're out in Old Town or 6th Street or wherever you're at. And you show up in court. You want to take this today, do a diversion deal. Okay, fill this form out. Go take it over there. Go take it over there. It's like, it's all scribbles, right? So this is normal in a regular case. But this is not a regular case. This is Sidney Powell's case. This is one of the nation's most preeminent cases right now. It's the RICO case involving Fani Willis and the former president, current presidential candidate running, probably might win. So the fact that they just cobbled this together and like this, like they did not even type it up, okay? In felony cases, you type up the plea deal, okay? You type it up. It's a felony. But they're dropping this from a felony down to a misdemeanor, so now they're using the felony, they're using the misdemeanor form. And there's some prosecutor who's back there who's just filling this out like with a ballpoint pen, and he's trying to like dig it in there, all right, for a Sidney Powell case. And I know this seems like maybe like minor nonsense, but it's ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can do it this way. It's perfectly fine to do it this way. Like, it's valid, it's legitimate, but it's just like, it doesn't match the severity of the circumstance that they say that we're under. And when you want a little bit more clarity on this, like, wouldn't you want them to put in writing what Sidney Powell can and cannot do? Like, look how vague this is. There's so much gray area here. Let's go through it. We see it says here right in front of Judge Scott McAfee, and in another segment, we'll listen to the whole thing and watch him go through this. But he says here, we've got a plea of guilties in front of my courtroom. What is your legal name? Sidney Catherine Powell. At this time, are you under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or medication? No. How old are you? And these are questions that you'll get to make sure that this person who's taking the plea, and this is probably the judge writing this, and maybe so I don't know if the judge is writing this. I don't know how they do it in Georgia. I don't know if the judge is writing this and she signs it, or if they fill it out and the judge reviews it with her, right? Sometimes the judge will review it with her and say, is this your signature? You filled this out. Is this your signature? Yes. Okay, I'm going to run through it with you. Do you agree with all of this? We'll see. We're going to hear him do it in a minute. So here's what she says. How far did you go in school? Bachelor's, JD. Can you read and write English? Yes. Have you ever received psychiatric treatment or been to a mental hospital? If so, and where? No. Do you wish to plead guilty to the offense in this case? Yes. Got to do this stuff knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently. Do you understand you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to the charge? Yes, I do. And do you understand that by pleading guilty, you agree that you understand the nature of the charges? You know what's happening. You waive the right to a trial by jury. You waive the right to the presumption of innocence. You can't plead guilty if you're still going to allege you're innocent. You waive the right to confront witnesses. Nobody's going to be coming in to testify. You waive the right to subpoena witnesses since you're done. You also waive the right to testify and offer other evidence on your behalf since there will not be a trial. You don't get counsel during trial since there will not be a trial. And you waive the right not to testify against yourself. And that by pleading not guilty or remaining silent and not entering a plea, you could obtain a jury trial. So you're going to plead guilty, which means you have to say, I'm guilty, and you can't turn around and invoke your right to remain silent if you're going to be in my courtroom pleading guilty. So the question is, do you understand that you may obtain a jury trial? Should you elect to plead not guilty? You could get one, but you're not going to, right? Yes. You acknowledge that you've entered this plea freely voluntarily, and with a full understanding of all the rights that you are giving up? Yes. And do you acknowledge that no one has made any promises or threats to influence your decision to plead guilty here today? Yes. And so we've got a different change in the pen now. So my question is like, who is writing this? Might be the judge. No. This is the prosecutor. I think prosecutor fills it out. Do you understand the prosecutor is recommending the following sentence? For counts 1 to 6, 12 months probation on each consecutively. So in criminal sentencing, we talk about 2 C words, concurrently versus consecutively. Consecutively is basically what it sounds like one comes after the other. So every 12-month probation, which is what they're asking for, would be stacked one after the other. So you do year 1 for count 1. You do year 2 for count 2. You do count 3 as a third year, and so on. So she could theoretically get up to 6 years of probation if he maxes her out on that. $6,000 fine, so about $1,000 for each count. $2,700 in restitution, an apology letter, truthful testimony at trial and other proceedings, which is like already a part of the deal, okay, because she can't perjure herself. So I don't know what other proceedings that means, but yeah, I mean, if she's a witness, she can't perjure herself, so that's like stupid. Like that's obviously there, but okay. She's not going to lie, already wasn't going to do that. No communication with other co-Ds, witnesses, or media. That's an interesting one. So she can't communicate with co-defendants is what I think that says. It's a co-D. Like this is why this is so stupid. Co-Ds, right? The typical sign for a defendant is this. Prosecutor is this, like the pi sign, and then this is defendant. So co-defendants, I think, or that could be a D, I don't know. Co-Ds, witnesses, or the media. Now there's a curious, like Sidney Powell doesn't have to talk to the other co-defendants, but if she wants to talk to them and they want to talk to her, it's interesting how they're going to limit her ability to do that. Now she like, for example, if I'm Donald Trump, I might want to say, well, I want to interview Sidney Powell. And they'll say, you can't do that. She's our witness. But not really though. Like she's not really your witness. She's a witness in the case, and Donald Trump has a right to interview a witness in the case. Now, she has a right maybe to refuse that, but Fani doesn't have the right to refuse that on her behalf. It's like making her a witness to them. So that's curious. We'll see what that turns into. Until all cases have been closed, then she can talk. And then they jammed this in here too. Full proffer, okay, so a full proffer, so they'll give us their factual basis, they'll read something, and provide documents. So this is my point, like this is very strange, okay? If you think about this in any context, like if you were taking a plea deal, would you like to sign something that somebody scribbled in like this? Like just ask yourself at home. Like you're pleading guilty to 6 misdemeanor charges. Like, wouldn't you want a little bit more clarity about who does what and when and where all this goes and co-defendants and witnesses? Like, what do you mean? This is all just jumbled in. And I think it's because they're scrambling. And honestly, I think it's because they don't want a lot of clarity. Like if Fani Willis wanted a lot of clarity in this, they would do it. But they're just trying to squeeze this through. Like this is their doing. This is their offer. So do you understand that although this is a negotiated plea, the judge doesn't have to accept this? Yes. You understand that the maximum sentence you can receive, you've been advised the maximum sentence you can receive is 6 years. They put 47. They were going to write in maybe some months. And the minimum sentence you can receive is 0. Now, I think under the term of the law, I don't know if that was intending to be 6 years jail or 6 years probation. But it is what, we don't know. They moved on. Obviously, she didn't get jail. You understand, you acknowledge, you've been advised that if you're not a citizen, this could have an impact on your immigration status. This goes on everyone by law. Do you acknowledge that you've been advised of a guilty plea? that it could be used to aggravate the punishment in another conviction, so we'll use this against you if you get in trouble again? And do you acknowledge you've had sufficient time to discuss this with your lawyer? Yeah. You understand that if you take this, there's not going to be a trial? Yeah. And that if you wish to seek relief for habeas corpus or file a petition for post-conviction relief or anything like that, you've got deadlines to follow? Yes. And Sidney Powell, to the charges, which we'll look at, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? She writes guilty, signed this October 19th. Sidney Powell, signed here. And this is the signature of the attorney, along with the defense attorney who signed off on it there. And the attorney certifying, I've read everything, I've explained everything. And they're done, right? So now, let's look at the actual charges, because this is another short document. And as we explained already, same charges times 6, right? Same numbers right here, all the way down. So we just follow them every single time. It's just the same thing times 6. And again, as we're playing along at home, we're asking about Venn diagrams. All of this is Sidney Powell conduct, but how does it spread out automatically and go over to Trump? Or can Sidney testify without implicating Trump at all, and the government would just come back and point to these crimes, not the original crimes, these? Here's the conduct. They say the undersigned prosecuting attorney, let's start with count 1. On behalf of the people, we charge Sidney Powell with conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties. So conspiracy, but who's a part of the conspiracy here? Because this is not the RICO case, right? Not racketeering, which brings us into other people. Was Donald Trump a part of this conspiracy? I don't know. Here it's what it says. On the first day of this, unlawfully conspired to delay Misty Hampton from the performance of their duties by entering a contract with Sullivan Stickler, right? Same thing. Just like when you sign up for Netflix or something, right? It's a transaction. It's a contract. Then they say in count 2, they conspired by causing, after the contract was signed, that company to travel from Fulton County, Georgia, to look at ballots, right? But Sidney Powell is the person who did it. Sidney Powell signed the contract executed, and the company started taking action. Then the company traveled. Did Donald Trump, are they alleging Donald Trump caused Sidney Powell to sign that? I'm not seeing that in this charging document. We'll listen to what the soliloquy says and what the proffer says. Sidney Powell also then committed interference with the performance of duty again by paying. So it's the contract, it's the travel, it's the payment. Same thing here. Saying that they knew that the purpose of using a computer, count 4, was to access voter data. So that it's the same series of acts. Also examining voter data, which is a separate offense, right? Voter data is different than other data. Data's data, but then voter data is very serious. And then lastly, same company, Sidney Powell entered into a contract and delivered payment. Okay, so once the work was done, entered into a payment. So here's what Sidney Powell is pled guilty to. Okay, hiring a third-party consultant to go look at some computer files. That's it. As a lawyer, she hired a third-party person to go look at some files, and Fani Willis charged her with crimes for that. Because maybe they accessed some records that they say that they shouldn't have, or it's interfering and delaying Misty Hampton. So it's actually not even, it's just kind of the delay of her, right? Like the intention of examining the voter data. It doesn't even say that they actually examined the voter data. So they intended to examine the voter data with knowledge that it was part of a conspiracy. Didn't actually look at it. And then sent a payment to it. And all of this was delaying this one person. Okay, so this is the election official. Misty Hampton, aka Emily Misty Hayes. She's really she's like the victim of these crimes here. I think she's in every single one of these. Misty Hayes right there, and Misty Hayes right there. So she's the victim. So it's all just basically this company was just kind of slowing her down, actually. Like they're not even charged with looking at the records. It's just they were impeding her. It's basically nothing. Okay, it's like I would imagine if you like bumped into somebody at an election, facility, and like you delayed or you shouted at somebody or something like that, right? If you were like, "Give me my paper ballot, it's not printing, I want another one," and you hindered and delayed, then you could be charged with this. It's a misdemeanor. It is a total basic charge, and the big thing that stands out, my friends, no racketeering. And you can scroll through this whole document, as we just did, and there's not a single mention of Donald Trump in there. And it's about a lawyer who hired a third party that intended to go do some stuff, that delayed one election official, and it's now just misdemeanor. It's like nothing, okay? It's like a joke. Relative to what they originally charged her with, which was all sorts of 7 felonies, including one that implicated Donald Trump. So basically nothing there. And you can see here, the real question is going to be, what is the testimony and what does it sound like when Sidney Powell is called to the stand, if that happens and when? And so we'll cover the full court proceeding in the next segment. Check us out there if you want to continue on this. But my friends, we'll be following Big Fani's RICO case, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Now, let's get into the hearing itself and see what we've got inside. Sidney Powell pleads guilty, 6 counts, all misdemeanors. Big Fani, who brought 7 felony charges originally, dropped all of those, including the big racketeering charge that implicated Donald Trump. But now we are back in court, Sidney Powell pleading guilty. And we're going to go through this proceeding here in depth because Judge McAfee was there in Georgia, and we're going to see what he has in session for us. And I want to walk through this in some detail because it's important to understand how this works. What's happening here is, and we went through this, gone through this many times here before, but what we're always interested in is the factual basis. What are they saying that Sidney Powell actually did? And can that statement, as made on the record in the courtroom, can that be used against Donald Trump or Mark Meadows or Rudy Giuliani or any of these other people? Because she's pleading guilty, but she's not pleading guilty to insurrecting or racketeering or any of those other things. So they're trying to make something out of nothing. And I also got to point out that people take guilty pleas in this country all the time when they are not guilty. And I'm sorry to say that. I know a lot of people don't believe that, and it kind of breaks people's hearts, but it's absolutely true. Innocent people in this country plead guilty every day. Many of them did today. Why? Because they don't want to get hit with a trial tax or a trial penalty. You go to trial and try to prove your innocence in a bad jurisdiction, you could be in big trouble. Sidney Powell is the victim of a partisan political prosecution, and so she can absolutely, I think, sleep easy, taking a plea deal that is something that is in her best interests, especially if, as we suspect, she threads the needle in a way that makes this only limited to her conduct and that she doesn't really have to testify about anything else really outside of this small bubble. But the question is, what does this proffer look like? What is this factual basis that she's going to agree to? What does it sound like? And we're going to listen in as the judge walks us through. So there is some dead air for a while, I think, as they're getting situated. And so you can see they brought us in on Zoom. And let's get it started when they bring the mics on. Calling the case. The case is State of Georgia versus Sidney Powell. We're on the record.
Judge, the case has been accused under 23 SC 190370, count 1 being conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties, and counts 2 through 6 being conspiracy to commit intentional interference with
Fani
performance
Willis
of election duties. Each of these charges being misdemeanor charges. The state's recommendation on those charges on 1 through 6 is 12 months to be served on probation.
Probation.
Each one of those counts to run consecutive to one another for a total of 6 years of probation. Conditions of probation is a $6,000 fine. Restitution in the amount of $2,700 to the state of Georgia. An apology letter to the state of Georgia, the citizens of the state of Georgia. Testify truthfully at all hearings and trials involving co-defendants in this matter. No communication with co-defendants, witnesses, or media until all cases have been closed. As a special condition of probation, that the defendant must provide a recorded proffer, which I will tell the court that was done last night. So we do have that, and that has been satisfied. And also to provide any requested documents or evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in good faith prior to entering this plea. We did.
What is in the proffer? They better play that, man. They better play that for the record. So she says that she gave them a proffer, but what is that?
We had that discussion with Ms. Powell and her attorney, and they do understand that they are to turn over documents to us, and they agreed to do such. Those are the conditions of the probated sentence, Judge.
Okay, so she read through that same scribbled format that we looked at on the document. Maybe she was the one who was drafting that. Oh, no, say we got trial tomorrow, jury selection, picking it out very quickly. But I am curious about this co-defendant thing, that Sidney Powell can't talk to them. And again, if she doesn't want to, I guess that's a different story. But what if they want to interview her? I mean, they could bring her and cross-examine her, of course. But if she is voluntarily wanting to communicate with them, she should have that right. Let's continue.
And is there expected to be a request here to apply the First Offender Act?
Yes, there is, Your Honor. Part of the negotiation was first offender treatment. The fines is set forth by the government along with restitution. The letter of apology, which has already also been provided along with the recorded proffer. The only other issue which I discussed with the government this morning is a similar issue that came up with Mr. Hall.
Pausing briefly. He talked about the First Offender Act. I don't practice law in Georgia. I do practice in Arizona. I'm also licensed in California, and other states have different. I'm sorry, I'm not practicing law at the moment, but I'm licensed in Arizona and licensed in California. Just to be clear on that. But the distinction here is some states will have like 3 strikes rules, where the first strike will be probation only, second strike will be jail, and third strike will then be prison. So for a first offender, maybe they're just saying it's probation. Like, we're not going to give you jail. You've never been in trouble before. No other convictions. So
During the question of whether or not these offenses constitute crimes of moral turpitude, we were requesting the same treatment as Mr. Hall received as it relates to that issue. I understand the government can't really make those sorts of determinations, but will take no position with respect to whether any of these offenses, which are all misdemeanors, constitute crimes of moral turpitude.
Well, as I recall in Mr. Hall's
crimes of moral turpitude are things like lying, dishonesty, fraud. When you're trying to take advantage of somebody else, that's different, right? Like, let's say like you're in an assault case. You punch somebody because there's an argument and there's a disagreement and something gets out of hand, and so you hit somebody. It's kind of like a crime of passion. It's something that happens. You're not actively trying to be violent, although in some cases you are, but then that's like aggravated assault. But in some situations, you might actively have somebody that's like intentionally trying to defraud somebody and be a liar about it and try to manipulate something. And so we consider those crimes to be a little bit worse because it's a guilty mind to a different extent than some other crimes that don't have the same mental guilty level of culpability. So that's what they were talking about. And he's saying, Your Honor, other people have come through this courtroom, like Hall, who took a plea deal previously, was another co-defendant, and you didn't treat his crime, which is very similar to our crime, as a crime of moral turpitude. You didn't think that he was dishonest in his intentions, and so we'd ask that you apply the same thing here.
Final disposition form, we included express wording to that effect at the request of both parties. Is that essentially what we're asking for here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
The state's leaving it up to the court, Your Honor. We're really not taking a position on that.
Okay. With the first offender, Mr. Rafferty, you're requesting immediate sealing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Immediate sealing.
And
so everything's going to be okay. So I don't know what that means. So in Georgia, it could be. In Arizona, we have something called a set aside, which is a motion to set aside. It might be something like that, which allows you to kind of seal it and clear the record up. Or this could be something related to the specifics of this case. But I think he said under the first, anyways. Minor details.
You'll have to remind me, this being a misdemeanor first offender,
Yeah.
do we need to impose a behavioral incentive date? And if so, what would that be? Or is that
my
not
understanding that
necessary?
it does not apply to misdemeanor probation, Judge.
Understood. And are there any issues here? Is this an Alfred plea or a null of any kind?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Young, you can proceed.
Ms. Powell, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this matter currently before the court shall be the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you please state your true and correct legal name?
Sidney Catherine Powell.
And are you the Sidney Catherine Powell named in accusation 23 SC 190370?
I am.
And are you currently taking any medication or under the influence of any drugs or alcohol at this time?
No, I'm not.
Is there any medication that you should be taking that you have not taken that may affect your ability to understand these proceedings today?
No.
This is interesting. In Arizona, the prosecutor doesn't do this, the judge does.
How old are you, ma'am?
Oh, gosh. 68, despite my astonishingly youthful countenance.
You look good, Sidney.
And
You
what
look
is the highest level of
fabulous.
education that you have completed?
I have a Juris Doctorate degree.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
And Mr. Rafferty, have you had a chance to go over the guilty plea form with Ms. Powell?
I have.
And did you, when you went over the form with her, do you believe that she fully understands each and every aspect of that form?
I do.
Ms. Powell, do you understand the charges that are against you here today?
I do.
And Mr. Young, let me pause you there since we're on that subject. If we could tender the plea form now as well. Of course.
Have you, I just want to make sure. And Mr. Rafferty, you signed this along with your attorney, with your counsel?
I have.
Sorry, your client.
Yes, I have. May I approach you?
Of course. All right, thank you. And Ms. Powell, I've been handed a document that's titled Plea of Guilty Form. Is this your signature as well on the second page?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
And ma'am, do you understand that this is a negotiated plea, which means that your attorney and I have reached an agreement, or the state has reached an agreement as to the proposed sentence that will be made to the court?
I do.
Do you understand that the recommendation being made to the court as to this accusation on counts 1 through 6, that you be sentenced to 12 months of probation to run consecutive with one another?
I do.
Do you understand that the state is asking that a $6,000 fine be imposed, a restitution of $2,700 be paid to the state of Georgia, an apology letter be written to the citizens of the state of Georgia, that you truthfully testify at all hearings and proceedings and trials involving the co-defendants in this matter, and that you have no communication with co-defendants, media, or witnesses until this case has been completely closed against all defendants?
I do.
And do you understand as a special condition of this sentence
I don't know
that
what-
you were to provide, which you've already done, a recorded
If that's
proffer
gonna
to the
matter or
state,
not.
and provide any documents and evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in a good faith prior to entering this?
In other words, what if Donald Trump or somebody else says, hey, we want to subpoena Sidney Powell for a deposition or something, or we want to, like they forced an issue on that. Like they want to go and have a conversation with her, and then Fani's going to say, you can't do that. And now we've got a conflict there.
This plea.
I do.
And Judge, at this time, the state will enter into evidence what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1, which is the apology letter that Ms. Powell has already.
I want to know if these documents
And Ms.
are
Powell, do you
dropped.
understand that this court does not have to follow the state's recommendation in this case?
I do.
And do you understand if the court chooses not to follow the state's recommendation, then you can withdraw your guilty plea and move forward with trial on the original indictment?
I do.
And do you understand that if you are currently on probation or parole, your probation or parole may be revoked based on entering this guilty plea?
Yes.
And do you understand that if you are placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate the law in any way, or the government, or any special conditions of your probation that would subject your probation to being revoked for the balance that is remaining?
I understand.
And do you understand that you are not allowed to possess any firearms while you're on probation?
Firearms? It's misdemeanors. It's misdemeanors, not felony. Hey, lawyers, she's not pleading guilty to felonies. Is that part of the deal? She's educating her lawyer. Firearms, I didn't see that in there. She's like,
Ms. Young, are you confident that that's accurate?
I'm locked
This
and
being a
loaded.
misdemeanor plea that doesn't involve domestic violence or.
Judge got it.
I'm not aware of a prohibition under Georgia law that would prevent her from possessing a firearm while on misdemeanor probation.
She's like, I'm strapped, man.
Judge, I will candidly say I am not certain.
All right. Well, how about we alter that to say that this plea may affect your ability to possess a firearm?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Do you understand that, Ms. Powell, that this plea to misdemeanor probation may affect your ability to possess firearms?
Yes.
See on that, like this is the type of gray area garbage. Like this plea deal is rushed. They are cramming this through because they don't even know. Judge doesn't know. His defense lawyer doesn't know. Prosecutor doesn't know. They're all sitting around. They're just like trying to cram it through. This is interesting. All right. Now, look, by the way, okay, just to be clear, this stuff happens all the time. All the time. You just run plea deals through. I don't know. Who knows whether it impacts your gun rights or not? Guess what? The answer to that is usually it doesn't, right? You know, generally, but it could, right? I don't know. I don't practice in Georgia, but you know, and I generally tell people like, you know, don't plead guilty unless you know what it's going to do to you. But there are situations where somebody might say, I don't have guns. I don't care. Okay, right? I'm never going to own a gun. I don't care about guns, whatever. So you move on past it. It's like, whatever. But not in a case like this. This is Sidney Powell. This is Donald Trump. This is a RICO case. They spent 3 years investigating this. This should be buttoned up, man. We should have everything detailed in, not everybody scrambling without answers.
Just back up a little bit. Mr. Rafferty, have you had an opportunity to go over the accusation with your client?
Sidney Powell probably is agreeing to this. Now, I want to compare and contrast this with Hunter's case. Okay. Hunter would have been sitting there saying, basically Hunter would say no. Okay. When Hunter was trying to get his plea deal through, he kind of screwed it up because there was an immunity provision. He said, hey, would you still take this if you didn't take it? If that provision wasn't in there, he said, no, I wouldn't take it. And so the whole plea deal got derailed. Okay, this was an example of something that could have derailed the plea agreement, although to a much more minor extent. Okay, Sidney Powell could have sat there and said, no, I've got guns all over the place. Like I'm strapped right now, you know, and then that could have deviated the whole plea, right? Now she's talking to her lawyer, probably like, yo, I've got guns like in the backseat of my truck right now. Like, what do you want me to do about this? And the lawyer's like, just shut your mouth. Okay, just shut up. Just take this plea deal. Like, this is an insane plea deal. Like, I don't know what that conversation was right there, but he might have been saying to her literally like, how important are your guns? Like, do you want to fight about this right now? Like, we can fight about it right now, or you can take this plea deal that just dismisses everything and just shut your mouth. And she's like, well, I have, but I'm like, I've got like this new 50 caliber that I wanted to test out with my husband this weekend. Like, can I do that still? He's like, just, well, where are you going? Like, maybe I'll join you. They're like, okay, just pipe down. Right. So they're moving on through this thing. And finally the judge pipes up. He's like, I don't know that it matters. And they just cram it through. Like this is a group of people that want to get a plea deal done. Now, in the Hunter case, as we talked about, we didn't get to watch it, but the whole thing got deviated, right? Because he said, what about immunity? And what about this? And what about this? Guess what? Fani's not going to charge Sidney Powell with a gun crime. Okay. She could have 50 guns at her house, probably does. And they're not going to charge her with a crime for this. Like, this is buttoning it up. Don't fight over the small things that don't matter. Hunter fought over a big thing that mattered, but he should have been smarter and just said, if we enter the plea deal, then he could make his arguments after the fact, right? And so Sidney Powell can now make the argument that it may impact, but nobody said that it impacted it. Even the judge didn't know. So it's like, really interesting that this is like a big issue. It's like your gun rights, but sometimes you just let it go because it's, the deal must be so good. And the defense attorney's not even standing up. He knew what was going on. But he's thinking to himself, let's just let it ride.
Yeah.
And have you both signed this accusation?
Yeah.
And do you waive any defects that may be contained within this accusation?
We so waive.
And have you advised Ms. Powell of the minimum and maximums for each of the charges within the accusation?
I have.
And Ms. Powell, you understand that the maximum that you could receive is 12 months to serve on each of the charges in the accusation?
Yes.
I don't like this at all. So in Arizona, the judge goes through this whole thing. And, you know, it's like, I wouldn't want the prosecutor talking to my client. Like, just, you know, just sit over at your table. Let the judge do it. She's looking through the files.
And it's my understanding that you're asking the court to sentence you under the First Offender Act.
That's correct.
And have you pled guilty or nolo to or ever been convicted of any felonies or misdemeanor in the state of Georgia or any other jurisdiction?
No.
And do you understand that if you are sentenced under the First Offender Act, has your attorney gone over what that means and what that entitles?
Yes.
And do you understand that if you violate the terms of your first offender sentence or commit a new offense while on probation, your first offender status could be revoked, you could be adjudicated guilty, and you could be resentenced up to the maximum sentence for each charge in the accusation?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you successfully complete your probation under the First Offender Act and you are discharged, you can honestly say that you have never been convicted of these charges?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including mental health defenses, by entering this guilty plea?
Yes.
And do you understand that you would have 12 months from today's date in order to file a habeas corpus?
Yes.
And do you understand that unless counsel is substituted or permitted to withdraw, he will represent you until either the end of the term of court or 30 days from today's date, whichever is later?
That's fine. Yes.
And do you understand that you have until the last day of the current term of court to file a motion to withdraw your guilty plea?
Yes.
And you understand that that term ends on November 5th of 2023?
Yes.
And do you understand that any of the filings we just discussed must be filed by your counsel unless you are representing yourself?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking up this First Offender Act stuff.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the right to a trial by jury?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to remain silent and not to incriminate yourself?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to confront witnesses that the state may bring to testify against you?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to assistance of counsel hired by you or to a court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford one at trial?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right of the presumption of innocence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to have the charges against you proven beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after trial?
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything in order to enter into this guilty plea?
Other than what is recited in the documents, no.
How do you plead to 5 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal trespass?
Let me approach for a second.
We changed, there's the trespass count was changed,
Look.
so it's all 6 counts.
Look.
It's 6 counts of the first.
Look.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Look. She doesn't even know. The prosecutor doesn't even know what they are doing. Unbelievable. So they just changed it. I'm telling you, man, they were scribbling this in the back room. They were scribbling this in the halls outside of the courtroom. Let's go back on that.
Criminal trespass and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal trespass.
No, it was 1 count conspiracy to commit criminal trespass. So that would have been that would have been a felony. So they dropped that. Interesting. So they had, it looks like, 1 felony because the conspiracy to commit criminal trespass was on the original indictment, not on the new one. So they had 1 felony and 5 misdemeanors, and they dropped the 1 felony down to 6 misdemeanors. Okay. And you know what that tells me? Their case is crap. It literally is the example that I just gave you, right? Going from 30 days to 15 days to 48 hours to the day of, they give you the smoking deal. And this is exactly why that lawyer was like, shut up. Just shut up about the guns, okay? Just quiet down. Just be quiet. I got all your felonies gone. He's just like, quiet. And she was still reading from the felony charge. Like they wanted to get Sidney with at least one felony, the criminal trespass, but they changed it.
Let me approach for a second. We changed, the trespass count was changed, so it's all 6 counts. It's 6 counts of the first.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, man.
I apologize. How do you plead to the 6 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties?
Guilty.
Oh my God.
Do you understand that you may have a limited right to appeal?
Okay, so this makes me like this plea deal way much better. Okay, even more. It's like, you can see it was 30 days to 15, right? My example, 30 days to 15 to 48 to whatever. The 48 example was what they started the day with. It was felony plus 5 misdemeanors. They came down even harder to 6 misdemeanors.
Which I've gone over with you.
Yes.
And didn't even realize it until they're halfway through the plea deal. It's a joke. It's a kangaroo joke. They don't even know what they're charging. And they're panicked because they've got trial coming up, and so they're just trying to slam it together, and this lawyer is trying to run it through.
Judge, if this case had gone to trial, the state
So
would have
funny.
shown that between the dates of December 1st of 2020 and January 7th of 2021, the defendant, Sidney Powell, along with several co-conspirators, entered into a conspiracy to intervene with the performance of election duties of co-defendant Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty Hayes.
Okay, so we're paying very close attention to this, right? What is she saying Sidney Powell did? Sidney Powell interfered with Misty Hayes, entered into a conspiracy with other people. Do we hear Donald Trump? If you hear Donald Trump, you win bingo, all right? If you hear his name in this, you win bingo.
At all times relevant to the conspiracy, Misty Hampton was the elections director for Coffee County, Georgia, and was subject to all duties imposed by Chapter 2 of Title 21 of OCGA. The purpose of the conspiracy was to use Misty Hampton's position to unlawfully access secure elections machines in Coffee County, Georgia. This conspiracy included the following objectives. 1, to willfully tamper with electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines.
Okay.
2, to cause certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officer with the care of ballots for a purpose required by law to possess official ballots outside of the polling place.
Okay.
3, to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems Corporation.
Now, just pausing, you can see the defense attorney and Sidney Powell both reading along with her to make sure she's not missing anything, to make sure it all matches.
4, to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of removing voting data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from said computer.
Now, what are they
5, to
talking
use a
about?
computer with the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority. Each of these constituted attempts to interfere with, hinder, and delay Misty Hampton in the performance of her election duties. In furtherance of these conspiracies, the defendant entered into a contract with Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fulton County, Georgia, and delivered a payment to Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fulton County, Georgia, and caused employees of
Then they
Sullivan
did something.
Strickler LLC to travel from Fulton County, Georgia, to Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of accomplishing the objectives of this conspiracy. These were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. The data taken from Coffee County, Georgia, was distributed to members of the conspiracy and unknown persons in Georgia and elsewhere.
Unknown.
That would be the factual basis for the charges in this case. The state has looked at.
Did you hear what she said? That was the factual basis for the charges in this case. Did anybody hear Donald Trump's name in that? I didn't. I've been waiting this whole time for it. Not a single word. Not orchestrated by him, not colluded, nothing, not even a phrase. Sidney Powell entered into a contract with a third-party provider for a bunch of misdemeanor type of research. Oh man, this is not looking good for them.
Mrs. Powell background, she does not have any prior convictions being misdemeanors or felonies.
Nope.
And at this time, the state will
What?
give to the court the signed accusation.
That's great. So nice job reading that, but there's no Trump in there.
Anything else, Ms. Young?
And Judge, I would just like to add, the restitution will go to the Secretary of State for the cost that was incurred for having to replace the equipment in Coffee County. It will provide payment information to the probation office.
Unknown person is not Trump. We know who Trump is. They got him at the top of the indictment. So whoever that person is, I don't know who that is. An unindicted co-conspirator? Okay. For a misdemeanor in this case? Wow.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Rafferty.
May I be seated, Judge?
Sir, anything you wanted to add?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Other than, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if it was in the formal signed plea by Ms. Powell, but reiterating what we've already discussed, she's pleading to misdemeanors. The indictment that was filed against her will be dismissed. We'll get first offender treatment, and we will have the language in there concerning crimes of moral turpitude.
Good job for this defense attorney. So she's getting a deal that is all misdemeanors. It's going to be no crimes of moral turpitude in there. I'm not licensed in Georgia, but it sounds like this Georgia First Offenders Act is very, very favorable, meaning that at some point she can seal her case. And honestly, at some point, I think the way that you might be able to read this is that when she completes the terms of her probation, that she will not be a convict anymore. Okay, I think first offender might give her the opportunity, and Georgia attorneys can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end of her term of the sentence, which the judge is going to give to here in a minute, she might be able to just completely wipe the convictions clean. In other words, 6 years from now, her convictions are gone, pursuant to being sentenced under the First Amendment provisions.
All right, Ms. Powell, I just have a few questions for you. Do you understand the nature of the charges that have been reaccused and that you would be pleading guilty to today?
I do, sir.
And you've heard all the rights that the state has gone through that you would waive by going forward with this plea. Do you still wish to waive those rights?
I do.
And are you pleading guilty today because you agree that there is a sufficient factual basis, that there are enough facts that support this plea of guilty?
I do.
Mr. Rafferty?
Not much. We just heard from them. Doesn't involve Trump. Very limited. It is a contract, a payment, and some actions from a third party.
Are you satisfied your client is competent in understanding that the plea is voluntary and that there is a sufficient factual basis for entering this plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
I agree and find that there is a sufficient factual basis, and I find this plea of guilty to be knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently entered. There's been a request that this sentence be entered under the First Offender Act, and the court will approve that request, withhold adjudication. But I must notify you, Ms. Powell, that you're not allowed to withdraw your plea simply because you do not comply with the terms of the sentence. And the terms of that sentence would be as recommended by the parties. On count 1, conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties, the sentence would be 12 months probation. And counts 2 through 6 would also be 12 months probation consecutive to each other and to count 1 for a total term of essentially 6 years probation, but we're going to translate that into months for the sentence sheet. Special conditions would include a $6,000 fine with $1,000 for each count. Restitution to be paid in the amount of $2,700 to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. You are to have written a letter, which you've already satisfied. You're also to provide a recorded proffer with the state, which you've already satisfied. You're to testify truthfully against any and all co-defendants in this matter at any upcoming proceedings. You are not to have any communication.
She already has to not perjure herself.
With any witness, any co-defendant, or any member of the media concerning the facts or circumstances of this case. And you to provide all documents to the district attorney's office as requested and relevant to this case. Again, Ms. Young, I would ask if you could provide the state's recitation of the exact phrasing of these, and we'll make sure that's reflected in the final disposition form. In order to make this sentence consistent with Mr. Hall, I do believe it would be appropriate, and I'm willing to include the language involving moral turpitude, although that language being included on the sentence form may not ultimately have any effect on the entities responsible for actually determining that. Are there any other express conditions, and special?
So what he's talking about there, you saw this idea of moral turpitude, a crime of moral turpitude, right? There are all sorts of other, we've talked about this many times, about collateral consequences, right? You might be convicted of a crime, and that crime might have certain legal consequences in a court of law, but that crime also might have collateral consequences, meaning they expand outside of the court of law. So for example, you might be convicted of a DUI, and your job might fire you, right? And you might say, well, that firing is just as bad as maybe even the criminal conviction because you lost your job and your livelihood. That's a collateral consequence, something that happened outside of the courtroom. And what they're talking about here is Powell wants this included, saying that this is not deemed a crime of moral turpitude, right? The judge is maybe finding that, but other people who see that she got convicted of conspiracy and interference, they might still consider that, like a credit agency, or if she tries to move in somewhere and they say, have you been convicted of a crime? And she says, yeah. And they say, what crime? And they say, conspiracy. Oh, what kind of conspiracy? To interfere with an election? And they might say, oh, that's dishonest. And so they might interpret it as being a crime of moral turpitude. So the judge is saying, yeah, I'll take it into consideration, but I can't guarantee that it is interpreted that way indefinitely.
Special conditions, Ms. Young, that you would like to see reflected on this sentence?
I think you covered, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Rafferty, is there anything else that you think needs to be on the record today? Ms. Young, do the state have an announcement regarding the indictment in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, the state will be entering an all-pros order on indictment number 23 SC 188947 as it applies to Ms. Powell.
All right. Well, upon being provided a copy of that motion, I will sign it and the charges in the indictment will be dismissed.
Okay, so she's saying I'll file something that will swap the charges out. We'll dismiss old charges. When he says when I get that, I'll dismiss that and then accept these.
All right. If there's nothing else, then we will conclude this and be off the record. Good luck, Ms. Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Now, what you heard this judge say is that he's going to withhold adjudication. Did you hear that? He's going to withhold adjudication. And then what I think he's going to be doing is kind of holding this case in kind of this non-prosecutorial first offender status. And we'll need a Georgia attorney to confirm, the exact mechanics of how this works. But if it's a first offender status and he's going to be holding the case in a non-adjudicated manner, he's going to pause adjudication. That means that he's going to hold it, and that essentially it's almost like a diversion agreement, meaning if Sidney Powell completes the terms that the court entered, she might be able to come back and now ask that the court literally dismiss the charges. So after 6 years of probation, if she doesn't file a motion to terminate probation early or something like that, all of these charges might be dismissed under the First Amendment Act provisions. So just wild. And I think that is where this is going to go. And this is exactly why the defense attorney was doing cartwheels to just keep this thing on the path. Sidney, don't complain about the guns, okay? This is a pretty dang good day. He goes in from 7 felonies to 6 misdemeanors. And at the conclusion of the term of probation, 0 misdemeanors. And Donald Trump is not implicated in this at all, based on the terms of the guilty plea, which ultimately may be held in sort of abeyance. Wow. This is what MSNBC said when they were reacting to this.
Let's take you to Atlanta, where just moments ago, Sidney Powell, one of the 19 co-defendants in the Trump election case in Fulton County, pleaded guilty. This is just one day before jury selection was set to begin in her trial. So I want to bring in our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett, as well as MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin. Laura, this is big news. What do we know?
Guys, this is enormously significant. Sidney Powell, one of Donald Trump's former attorneys, has agreed to plead guilty. They're just moments ago there in Georgia. I'm not sure if we have the video yet, but remember, she is part of the group that was alleged to have participated in this conspiracy to subvert the election, specifically as it relates to overturning the election results in Georgia. She had been facing a number of different felony counts. You can see there she's that's her on the screen there. She was obviously one of the top people who was sort of in and around those conversations, along with several other attorneys. There you can see some other facts there in terms of other ways that she was trying to subvert the election. Now, I don't think, have exactly what she's decided to plead guilty to.
Okay, so we already got all that, right? So kind of old news on that one. But look, this is what we've got here. So I wanted to share with you what we were just able to pull up on this Georgia first offender stuff. So here's what it says. It says, under Georgia law 42-8-60, says here that probation, this is under probation, Article 3 of probation, it says that probation prior to adjudication of guilt is the title. It says when a defendant, like Sidney Powell, has not been previously found guilty of a felony, which he hasn't, the court may, upon a guilty verdict or a plea of guilty, and before the adjudication of guilt, and without entering a judgment of guilt, and with the consent of the defendant, defer further proceedings and place the defendant on probation. The court shall not sentence a defendant under the provisions of this article unless the court has reviewed the criminal record, and when the court imposes a sentence, it can do the following things. Okay, this is very interesting. So in other words, it reads to me, and I'm not exactly positive on this, but it reads to me that Sidney Powell is in like this probationary deferred prosecution status. And that the judge placed her on probation. Think of it this way. In order for you to have a criminal conviction, like I've been found guilty of a crime, you typically need two things. One is a guilty plea, and the other is a sentence. Okay, so the judge will find you guilty, and we've seen this in many trials. Somebody gets found guilty, and then they're held in custody until we come back and have a sentence. But then the sentence comes back, and the sentence can be whatever. But we don't have both of those things. We just took a guilty plea, and then he kind of said that we're going to hold off on adjudication for a while, which means that Sidney Powell can come back and not have a conviction. 1 + 1 = 2. Guilty plus sentence equals conviction. She just has a guilty plea, but no sentence other than being placed on probation. Upon completion of that, the idea is that the guilty plea gets dismissed because she's complied with the terms of probation and the charges go away. That's the benefit of a first offense. It's like a diversion deal in Georgia, which means this is even a bigger deal than we thought. Incredible. Now, I did pull up some reaction from some other people. Jonathan Turley, when this was out earlier this morning, said, the plea of Sidney Powell to 6 misdemeanors will allow her to avoid jail, but she did not plead guilty to racketeering. That was the most serious charge there. And it was tied in to President Trump. She agreed to testify truthfully, but she's no longer facing a threat of prosecution and now can testify freely. That could make her a dangerous witness for both sides. And this guy's another pretty renowned lawyer. His name is Andy McCarthy. He posted this. He says, Sidney Powell's guilty plea points to a faltering case in Georgia. Ooh. He says, here's why. Now, while the media is going to spin this thing differently, my first impression is it signals that Fani's case is a dud. No doubt about it. Yeah, they just sold the farm for free, man. Powell, they just gave away the farm. Is that the phrase? Powell is the second defendant in this case to be offered a misdemeanor plea to dispose of what they told us was a grand conspiracy to destroy America. Scott Hall already pled guilty. Powell likewise pleaded guilty to the same charge. And they say here, she's not even required to plead guilty to RICO, exactly, or even admit that she was guilty of it. It has nothing to do with it. All the things related to that is gone. Powell's been given a sentence of 6 years probation, like Hall's sentence, got to write a letter of apology. Now, like Hall, Powell is cooperating with prosecutors, but on that score, as part of her plea deal, she gave a statement and it's under seal, so we have no idea what it says. Could be more cooperation than others, and I'm not sure about it. He says, let's put this in context. When prosecutors cut plea deals with cooperators early in the proceedings, they generally want the pleading defendants to admit guilt. Yeah, they want the first people out to testify, to be brought back in to testify against the other bigger fish. Like Powell would come in and testify against Trump. That's obviously not happening here. I mean, maybe she will. But she can just say, you know, oh, no, I don't know anything about that. And, well, you pled guilty. Yeah, but not about that. So that indicates that there's a major conspiracy here. But Willis is not only abandoning the RICO charge, she's not even getting felony guilty pleas. If these were serious prosecutions, we would not be seeing probation sentences. I totally agree. If Willis truly believed her RICO charge, she'd induce her cooperators to plead guilty to RICO and explain. I wouldn't call these sweetheart plea deals. Well, I mean, if it ultimately gets dismissed, it's a pretty good deal. Go from 7 to 0 is a pretty good deal. Now, 6 years of probation is not a good deal, but let's be clear. This is not a legitimate court, right? We're dealing with, I mean, the court, you can say what you want about the court, but the prosecution is illegitimate. This is Fani Willis as a partisan prosecutor who is going after her political opponents and has made a vendetta to do it. So I think this is a major loss for them. Now, they're going to continue to try to spin it in their favor, but it's basically like the whole case is going to go away, right? And consult your local Georgia attorney to see what the consequences of the first offender, the first offender act, what that does. But in my reading of it, it gives Sidney Powell a mechanism. Now, however they get there is to be seen, a mechanism of making these charges disappear, gone. So we'll fast forward at some point into the future and she will not be a convict at all, not be convicted of a crime. So a major victory. Don't let the people on the other side smear this and try to frame this differently. It's a joke. Fani Willis's prosecution is a joke. They know it's a joke. That's why they want Trump to be silenced elsewhere. And as this continues to proceed, I think we're going to see the wheels come off this entire thing. My friends, thank you for joining us as we cover this. Thank you for inviting somebody over to share with them what they're trying to do here so that they can see what the courts are doing to Sidney and to these other co-defendants and how it's all just partisan and political. We'll look forward to seeing them. We'll look forward to seeing you, my friends, right back here on the next one. And all right, everybody. Well, we'll leave it there on the day. We covered some good ground, some good stuff out of that Sidney Powell one. I wasn't expecting that to be so good, actually. And it was good. And I'm very glad that we went through that in as much detail as we did. And we also got to see some of these documents. It's just a big nothing burger. So big victory to Sidney. You know, it's never a victory when you have to plead guilty, but man, something happened in that courtroom. They got a smoking deal and they crammed it through and they got it done. So we'll continue to cover that. The House is coming after Matt Gaetz as well. And that's going to continue to spiral into, I think, tomorrow. And my understanding is, I think John McGarvey over on Locals told us that the House just gavelled out. And I thought that, I didn't even know that they were in session, but apparently they gavelled out. So the House is out. My friends, now it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this. We'll be going over to our members-only after party at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We very much appreciate our membos. Very supportive of everything that we do here. We're grateful for you. Come and join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Member streams in the morning. We already had a stream earlier this morning, a lot of fun. And we do Saturday shows as well. So come and check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. YouTube friends, if you're a member on YouTube, grab the private Telegram link. All members get access to that, so the chat never ends. It just goes on and on and on, my friends. Also want to invite you to join us at robertgovea.com, our website. The PDFs are all going to be posted there. Give us about 12 hours or so, and then we post all the segments, including the PDF. So anything that you saw that you liked, sign up for our newsletter. You can also just read the daily reports over there at robertgovea.com. And we're grateful to our newsletter subscribers growing every day. Now, let's see. Who is here today kicking things off? Oh, what's up, Leona? Leona is a member for 7 months. We are getting very close to a baby. The baby's kicking around, probably going to be a soccer player. Says, hi, y'all. Hope you're having a good week. You too, Leona. It's been an interesting week, man. It has been a busy week, and we're not done yet. We're going to be here tomorrow to get into it again and wrap it up. And so we'll see you back here. Thank you, Leona, for the very nice chat and dono in the house on this lovely day. And let me figure out where we are. That's from Leona. Hey, John McGarvey's in the house. Says the government stinks, man. No doubt about that. John McGarvey, a member for 15 months. That's almost 2 babies. Thanks, John, for being a good member, for modding down the fort for us. And you're absolutely right about that. The government's a dumpster fire. Just the worst. The worst. We got Fred Pedamontes here. Says, imagine even one Democrat voting against the speaker. They don't. They just fall in line, Fred. They're good little communists. They just march in lockstep, one right after another. Pretty amazing. Who else is here? What's up, Fred? Good to see you. We got Raymond Loera. Says, I was curious about the previous statements made from prosecutors and the judge during the last hearing that persuaded Powell to plead guilty. Thanks. From Raymond Loera. Well, there were a couple of difficult rulings, actually, that Sidney Powell had filed, and I was trying to see if there's a good way to share the documents quickly. But if you go over to the Fulton County Court Clerk website, they have the Sidney Powell documents there. And Sidney was filing, they were saying that there were Brady violations. She was filing a lot of stuff. And I was actually quite excited to go through the trial. I wasn't sure if the trial was going to go or not, and obviously it's not going. But they were going to start, and we were going to get up to speed very fast and cover it. But that's obviously not going to happen. But there was a bunch of back and forth. She was saying that they were hiding Brady material, and I think she lost a ruling that was mandating disclosure. So she lost a couple things, and the government made some moves, and we pled out. So I think it was a victory for her, but we'll see how it turns out, because now she'll be testifying, presumably. Robert's here. What's up, Robert? Says, thanks, Rob. You're teaching me the legal system, in quotes. Yeah, the legal system, right? It's our so-called justice system in Big Fani's court, where she's prosecuting her political opponents. Good to see you, Robert. Robert A's in the house. And look who's here. It's Viva Fry in the house. And my friends, if you're not already subscribed to Viva's channel, well, I mean, of course you are. But if you're not, well, then what the heck are you doing? Viva's over on Rumble. Viva's over on YouTube. And Viva is right next door on our locals community as well at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And so we always love chatting with Viva. He says, Viva had a conversation with Vivek, by the way. Shout out to Viva and Vivek. V squared over there. He says, was driving, now I can chat. This is a setup. Get one guilty plea and build up. Someone who promised the Kraken would not plead to anything. The Kraken was sabotage. So is this plea deal, in my humble opinion. Ooh, that's a spicy take from Viva. See what I'm saying? That's why you have to go subscribe to him, so you get a different flavor. And that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, so I can see Viva, I can see your take totally that maybe so Viva thinks maybe she's flipping. In other words, that when she gets called in to testify, she's going to be spilling the goods on Trump. The Kraken was a sabotage, and so is this plea deal. Ooh, that's a spicy take. Man, we might have to talk about that one, Viva. I'd be curious to explore that conversation, because the way I was taking it, it was that the Venn diagrams are just so far removed. I don't think that she has that much exposure to Donald Trump, that her testimony is that adverse to his. But we're gonna have to talk about it, I guess. We're just gonna have to do a stream together and just get into it. But it is curious, and what I got today from that actual segment of the trial was anxiety. I got this sense of rushedness to it. And that makes me think that they maybe were getting a really good deal that they weren't getting otherwise, because they were rushing it. I mean, they didn't even know what she was pleading guilty to. Something weird was going on. There's no doubt about it. It was a weird deal. Ordinarily, as we've seen, like with other plea deals, they're very well crafted, very nicely structured. And something was afoot today. So what's up, Viva? Thanks for stopping by, my brother. Hopefully you got to where you were driving to very safely and very soundly. And we'll connect soon, my friend. Thanks for stopping by. And guys, make sure you're already subscribed to Viva, by the way. Viva Fry on Rumble, on YouTube, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Love you, Viva. See you later. Vientikiss is here, says, if Trump got a sandwich from a vending machine, these people would indict everyone associated with that vending machine. Yeah, and anybody who bought one would be an insurrectionist, and the vending machine manufacturer, and the suppliers, and anybody related to the suppliers. And if you even think that a Twinkie is, delicious, well, you're in big trouble. All right, thanks, V. Knox Bierman's in the house. Says, Sidney Powell's plea deal alerted on my phone as I was leaving for court. I've been waiting to see the nitty gritty. Thank you, Robert. What's up, Knox? Yeah, so Knox Bierman's another lawyer in the house, and we'd be curious what Knox says about all this. And really about the kind of the haphazard execution of the court proceeding. I think that's what kind of is like, whoa, that was weird. Happened very quickly for a very high profile case. NY's in the house, says, who is taking this seriously? The plea deal is an admission. They have nothing in my mind. They have nothing in my mind. Well, I agree. I think that they do have very little. And Sidney took a smoke and plea deal, probably for her. And I don't know what she's going to do. It's going to be fun to see. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt on this one. I think that she's not going to testify adverse to Trump. If I had to guess, I'd say she's not going to testify adverse to Trump. She can come out and say everything about all of that stuff. But the Venn diagrams, I think she'll be clever enough to separate them out. We'll see. Dolphin Fan is the man, bringing in Harlan R., bringing in Nobody, bringing in Johnson News Network in the house. What's up, Johnson? And bringing in Dorothy D., along with Pope Rackets touched me. Again, Pope Rackets touched me is regularly here. And I guess every time he's back, it's another indication that Pope Rackets touched him. Oh, no. All right, well, hopefully, put some cream on it or something. Mama Rocks is here 4 months as a membo. Thank you, Mama Rocks, for being a membo for 4 months in the house. And we got some Viva gifts. We got some Viva gifts coming in. Shout out to Viva. I saw Viva pick up like a baby alligator the other day. It's like a month ago, maybe. He's in Florida, man. He's a Florida man. Mama Rocks is here for 4 months, Mama. Thank you for being here. Mama, you rock. 4 months. We're getting close to halfway to a baby on our end here. And I'm looking forward to it. Yohei Plumbing is here. Welcome aboard, Yohei Plumbing. And hey, for our YouTube members, don't forget to grab the Telegram link. And we'll see you in the members only after party coming up in just a few short minutes. We've got John McGarvey's here. Says, Rob, those young lady can't even read. Is that what we get when we get certain types of hires? We have a lot of legal complexities happening in various courtrooms around this country, and I'm not sure maybe it's the hiring protocol or something. I'm not sure. NY says, in another channel, they said that Georgia's probation department is so overwhelmed, she'd be off probation in under 2 years. I believe that. 13 of the total time if she complies in a basic way. So I would guess that too. And I would also guess, so we didn't talk about the different types of probation, but sometimes there's what's called intensive probation, which is, as you can imagine, pretty dang intense. You could have supervised probation, which is where you have a supervisor that you check in with, right? Somebody you call. You could have drug testing. You could have just somebody who checks in with you, like let's say every month, hey, you getting a job? You doing this? What are you doing? Don't get in trouble again. Are you hanging out with anybody? Are you getting in trouble with no? Okay, great. You're complying. But you could also have just unsupervised probation. In fact, it's the most common type of probation. Unsupervised. Happens all the time. And what does that mean? Very simple. Don't break the law. That's it. Just don't break the law again. And that often even excludes like traffic tickets and stuff, right? It's like, don't try to steal an election again or whatever. If you do that again, then you're in trouble. But it's probably going to be unsupervised. Or she might have to check in with somebody, and it'll go from maybe supervised to then unsupervised. So she might have like 6 months of like checking in with somebody, and then it'll drop off to unsupervised. It's like nothing. So she's basically just getting away with the slap on the, it's a slap on the wrist, all said and done. Here's this from NY says, you are correct, Rob. Texas also has this. So does Arizona. And for first offense, but we call ours different. Like ours is like a diversion agreement. And we come to a formal agreement kind of like what they did. Actually, it's exactly like what they did. It resembles a diversion agreement, but they didn't call it that. They called it a first offender act. So if they follow probation and the whole case disappears, often before the plea sentence, and the record is sealed with no recording of guilt. Yeah, I think that's what they're doing. Yohei Plumbing says, this one is coming in from my multiple caps messages. So you're getting a little shouty in the chat. That's okay. You can shout. These things are, complicated issues. No doubt about it. Rabbit Stick is here, says Trump is no longer a co-defendant. Not in this case. So she's pleading guilty, and then it's removing her from, they pulled her off of the racketeering case. It's a whole new indictment. It's a whole new information, right? And they're dismissing the other one. She's not a part of that one anymore. It's crazy, man. And they said that she was like the architect of this, right? She was walking around, going and talking to people, leading the charge. She was the big one. And the whole thing is just nothing. It's all going to be dismissed. Tony Hay says, what's up, Tony Hay? Doesn't say anything. He's bringing in 5 new membos, which is amazing. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing in Chuck H, Mary P, Tyrannus S. One Voice is coming in along with Adam M. Coming in with Adam M, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkett. Thank you, Tony, for being a member. Thank you for inviting in new membos. We're grateful for you. Crash says, Rob, the judge mentioned the needle in the haystack in relation to discovery. So you're talking about maybe Judge McAfee, who was saying that what Powell was requesting was a needle in a haystack. It's it's a fishing expedition, it's not necessary. Curious. Thanks, Crash. Yeah, it's interesting. I would have liked to have seen some of the evidence from Sidney. Zulu's here. What's up, Zulu? Amembo and Adono says, some people seem to think that Powell's testimony will benefit Trump. Do you think prosecutors forgot to ascertain what she will say before they entertained a plea deal? Well, I don't know. They forgot what she was pleading guilty to at that first read-through of the charges. So I don't really know what they're doing. Honestly, it felt like it was a rush. It felt like they were scrambling. And when that happens, it means that they don't have something lined up on their end. Now, I think that they probably know what she's going to say. I mean, they should know what she's going to say. But what are they going to extract out of her? So I don't know that her testimony is going to necessarily benefit Trump. So here's what what are they going to bring her in to testify for? Let's say we fast forward. Okay, wins trial, 6 months, whatever. We fast forward. We have trial. Trump is the person who's being charged. What is Sidney Powell going to do to convict Trump? Well, her close connection, really, as far as I can tell, is she managed this as Trump's lawyer, and Trump's going to have some separation there, right? At least an advice of counsel defense, theoretically, with that one. But this is one step removed, and nothing in her factual basis said that she was directed by Trump or that it was for the benefit of Trump or anything. And it's her hiring somebody to do an investigation of the records. That's it. And it impeded and slowly delayed the counting of the ballots or whatever for Misty Hammond. That's the actual conduct. So if you bring her in to testify against Trump, right, they're going to try to get her to say a bunch of stuff and admit a bunch of stuff, but she could be very squirrely about all that testimony. I don't remember. I wasn't related to that. I wasn't connected to that. I don't know much about that. I can't recall, whatever. And if they bring it back to this case and they say, well, you pled guilty to that, or why were you doing this stuff? And so I was investigating the election, and I thought, I was hired by a client, and the client said, do some due diligence, and I did my due diligence, and I thought that this was legal, and turns out it wasn't, but okay, it had nothing to do with Trump. So I think in that testimony, if she says, yeah, I'm a lawyer, I was hired by a Republican campaign, and I went to go investigate this thing, and they said it wasn't legal. I thought it was. I think that could help Trump. He had nothing. He didn't direct me to do anything. In fact, I didn't even plead guilty to racketeering. I didn't plead guilty to racketeering at all. In fact, they dismissed that charge, right? This government came in and they said I did that. And they said I did this and this and this. They charged a bunch of felonies and then they turned around and dismissed them all. So I think that, yeah, her testimony, theoretically could help Trump if she were to testify that way. Or those are the arguments that Trump could make. And if Powell does testify, adversely, then they might say, well, she took a plea deal in exchange. Did you take a plea deal in exchange for your testimony? Yeah. Okay. So if she does go against Trump, which I don't think that she will, then Trump can impeach her with some of the benefits that Fani gave her and still draw the distinction between the massive charges and the lower level charges. So Zulu, I think you might, there's a subtext to this comment that you might be implying that Fani's office is competent. Like they definitely ascertained what she's going to say before they gave her a plea deal. I'm not sure about that. Like they may think that their case coming on Monday is not strong. And so they gave her a smoke and plea deal. And they even wanted the felony, the trespass to stick, and that didn't even stick. So I think it's pretty weak on their side. MAGA Hat says Sidney filed her own case. Trump filed only one. I don't see how Powell has anything to do with Trump. Hey, Rosie's here, says, hey, RG, how about growing your hair out like Viva? You could have a hair competition. So my hair is pretty thick. It just stays. Like it doesn't fall over. It just stays, kind of like a chia. It just goes out like this. So I've actually tried to grow it long and it just kind of grows like a horn. Like it doesn't fall. It just turns into this horn. It's a weird look. Maybe one day we'll see. The other thing I was thinking about is maybe a stash, maybe a big stash, to change it up. Hey, we got Movember or something. Oh gosh, I forgot about that. So it means I probably won't do it. All right, who's this? Rosie's here, says, it's me and my twin sister's birthday today. Happy birthday to Rosie and Josie. My twin sister's birthday today. Two sisters celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday. Look at this to Rosie and Josie. Happy birthday. Happy birthday from all of us here at the Watcher of the Watchers Live and the community. Wishing you a happy birthday over on our locals community. Womb mates. Get it? Like roommates, except they were in the same womb together. Very happy birthday to Rosie and Josie. Thank you for letting us celebrate with you today. How fun. How fun. Hopefully you two are having a beautiful day and a beautiful night. And I don't know if this is Rosie or Josie, but somebody's got martini glasses, I think, on that shirt there. So hopefully you're having a beautiful day and a beautiful birthday. Happy birthday to Rosie and to Josie. How fun. All right. Super cool. And who else do we got? We've got Kathy is here. Says, I am new to your site. The Sidney Powell verdict is a wait and see for me, from Kathy. Welcome, Kathy. Well, we're glad that you joined us on our site. Hopefully you subscribed and we'll see you on the next one. But it says the verdict is a wait and see for me. So you're going to wait and see what her testimony looks like and how the whole thing unfolds. That's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah, she might have threaded the needle on this one. And, the reason I say this is because I've got some experience. Oftentimes this will happen in domestic violence cases, right? When a witness doesn't show up, they'll want your client to plead guilty. Then the witness doesn't show up. How about a probation? How about a diversion deal? No, witness is not showing up. Case gets dismissed. So stuff happens at the last minute that can get a little bit squirrely. And I think we witnessed that. I think we were able to peer inside. Hey, Crash is here. Says, no. In a prior hearing on discovery matters, the judge mentioned that the prosecution was hiding potential Brady material, the needle in the haystack, indicating to me that he might be reasonably fair. That's interesting. Okay, so you're saying that Sidney Powell was requesting access to materials and the judge was maybe siding with her, saying that the government was hiding it. Very curious. Well, he seemed competent to me today. He seemed like he knew what he was doing and he just walked through it. But it was he's done that a million times. Okay, the judge, how many different first step offender acts that judge has done? A trillion. He just sits there all day doing it. It's not even a thing. So this for Sidney Powell, the woman that we saw on the TVs all over the place, filing lawsuits left and right, she gets a diversion type of a deal? Give me a break. What's up? Tanya Karras is here. What's up? Hey, happy Taco Thursday, Tanya. I know it's Thursday, but we can still celebrate it. Happy birthday, twins, from the Tanya Karras in the house. Happy birthday to Rosie and Josie. Bodie's also here. Says, so if Sidney testifies against Trump, can she still plead the fifth? So no, because she's going to be basically granted immunity for this, and she's agreed to testify. So like she can't get up there. So remember when she went through there and said that I waived my right to remain silent and all that stuff? Like she can't be charged again, right? You plead the fifth so that you don't get charged with a crime. But if you're granted immunity against those charges, then the protection of the fifth doesn't apply. And she has agreed as a part of this plea deal to act as a witness. But my point is that, so what if she acts as a witness? What's she going to talk about? Like that little hula hoop of actions there that have nothing to do with the bigger RICO case? So what? It's like talking about an unrelated crime that is a subset of something bigger, but it's still a subset, and they're having a trouble, it's not racketeering anymore. So Viva's here. Viva MAGA says, hey, Rosie Posey, haha, how about since it's a twin's birthday, everyone here tip $2 to Rob? I'm fine with that. Sure, that sounds good. Yeah, so everybody, you've got your orders from Viva MAGA. Get those credit cards out. Let's get to it. I like it. It's 2 other people's birthdays, and I collect the tips. Shout out to Viva MAGA for that. Love it. What a great scam. We got Don't Be Hating is here. Says, happy double trouble birthday to our friends, the twins, the womb mates. Rosie and Josie joining us. The womb mates. Okay, so who else do we got? Don't Be Hating. Thank you for that one. And Indoctrination. It's happening. It started. It's a thing. Indoctrination says Twin Tip Thursday over on Locals. And another one from John McGarvey says, my twin tip. So shout out all those going over on behalf of the Rosies and the Josies celebration in the chat. So I'll be celebrating on behalf of you guys. Thank you for the tips. Here, this one came in from Kathy. What's up, Kathy? Became a supporter. Look at this very regal feline. Look at that pose. Oh my goodness. Like, draw me like your French girls, beautiful. Here from Kathy. What's up, Kathy? Thanks for becoming a supporter. We'll see you over at the after party. Locals members, don't forget to grab the Telegram link, which is in the community tab section on YouTube. And so we'll see you over there in the members only after party. And Bruce is here on YouTube shouting out a happy birthday. Say, Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne's here. Batman. Saying happy birthday over to Rosie and Josie. And here, another one. Vagabard GTF. Yeah, Vagabard GTF is in the house. Doing my part, also $2 for the birthday. Coming over in here. I don't know what's happening right now, but Bodie's doing the same thing too. And $2 from Bodie. And from John Allen, another $2 for saying, okay, Viva MAGA. All right, well now, this is starting to add up. We're going to have to, send something to Rosie and Josie. That's the only thing I know what to do with this cash coming in. So we'll have to figure it out. Thank you, everybody, for sending those in. Happy birthday. Collection coming in. Hey, this old guy is here. Says, Sidney's attorney had made 2 prior attempts to get Brady material from Fani. Instead, prosecutors gave him 8 terabytes of discovery and told him the Brady material was in that hard drive. As you know, they have to separately identify the Brady material, not his responsibility to look for a needle in the haystack. I see. Yeah, and they're doing that, right? And they're doing that in all of these cases. And if they have so much evidence against Sidney Powell in that 8 terabytes, why did they give her a garbage plea deal? How about they explain that one to us? They didn't even get a felony out of it because they have no case. What's up, Rebby Lee? Says, happy birthday, twins. Happy birthday to Rosie and Josie and Conroe, also making a dono as well. What's up, Conroe? Man, we really appreciate the twin birthdays here today. It's a very good revenue generator for the show. Appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that, Josie and Rosie in the house. Happy birthday to you both. Okay, let's say hello to our friends on the X, and then we'll wrap it up for our members only after party. While we still have some time, the clock is ticking. And John is doubling it. He says, I'll double it. And thank you, Rob. Thank you for an awesome stream. but I missed most of the first part, so I'll be rewatching it again later. Well, we're sorry we missed you, John, but thanks for doubling up the dono and the support for the work that we do here. Now let's see what's going on over on the X platform. And oh my gosh, it's an out of control day. We have a whopping, look what's happening right now. We have, you're not going to believe it, 2 people, myself and someone else. Thanks for watching here with me, bro or gal. It's good to see you together. We're going to be X strong. 2 viewers on the X. Who else is here? Fred Pedamonte says in court, it's called accelerated rehabilitation. AR is a pretrial diversionary program. If you successfully complete the AR, the criminal charges against you would be dismissed. What's up, black conservatives in the house and sharing a photograph? And they do understand. This looks like it's us. Hey, look at this. It's us. We're on the screen. This is from Black Conservative. He says, daily watch in effect. Thanks as always for the great breakdowns and insights. Now, if I can only get my NPR listening family members to watch. That's us in the house. What's up in the house? Man, that was a pretty good change of plea proceeding, actually. Good to see you, Black Conservative. Hopefully you're having a beautiful night over there. El Guapo says, release the Kraken. Simon says, unleash the Kraken. And Newton says, so RICO stands for really, I overcharged. Really, I charged over. I think that's true, too. All right, so those are from our friends on the X. And my friends, if you want to follow us, you can. You can also join our community. We have a Watching the Watchers community on the X, and you can connect with other people, share links, follow other watchers, and build out your network as well on the Watching the Watchers community on the X. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We had a couple donos coming in. Red One is here. Says, here we go. And hi, Robert from Red One with the $2 dono in the house. Thank you, Red One. And Gidgy is here. What's up, Gidgy? Sending in another one. Says, happy birthday, Rosie and Josie. All the love coming in. We got Wendy Sloan is sending one in. Happy birthday, man. It's so funny. Dolphin fan says, happy birthday to the twins. Much love for Rosie and Josie. We've got John Allen says, okay, what the heck? Here's another one. Says, what the heck? Might as well make Vientikis, who's clipping all these, work hard since, you know, he's kind of been slacking a lot. And so another $2 comes in from John Allen. And Vientikis is responding with this guy, which I think reminds me of the head of a Lego guy. And Flash Rivers here says, those dollars are Bidenomics monopoly money, so I hope Rob can buy a hotel on Fifth Avenue. Happy blessed Friday birthday. Have a happy blessed birthday, Rosie and Posey, with 2 looks like margaritas, courtesy of Flash River. And Flash sent me a super cool email on this AI little project we're working on. Super cool. And so very, very grateful for you, Flash. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's all just free money. I think I could buy Mar-a-Lago now. With all those donations that came in, we're going to have to send that's what we'll do. Hey, Rosie and Josie, we'll go buy Mar-a-Lago with all of your birthday money together. And that'll be our party together. Because it's only like worth what, like $18.50 or something? We definitely have that. So thanks, Flash River, for that one. And that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to hang out with our members for a bit over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Don't forget to check out robertgovea.com to sign up for our daily newsletter, read all the show reports, download the PDFs. All the good stuff is over there. We also want to say thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. Big shout outs to our friend, Vientikis Prime, modding for us. K-Bean, we got Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, and of course, John McGarvey, all in the house. We also want to thank Geegum Geegum, our meme smith, Nathan N810, and our friend Sleepy Dog Lee over on the X. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And so we are going to be back here tomorrow to get into it all again. One final one before we close it out says, from Randy Brandel, I've been guilted in. Happy birthday! Of course, thank you, Randy, for sending that one in. And Rebby Lee just became a supporter over on the tubes. But that, now, my friends, is it for us on the day. It was busy. Tomorrow, it's going to be busier. Why? It's Friday, and there's always stuff that happens on Friday. And so we will be coming back to get into it again. Viva MAGA says, this one is from my twin sister to close it out from the day. From a twin sister to a twin sister. Viva MAGA to Rosie and Josie. Happy birthdays all around, my friends. And so we are going to leave it there. Members, stick around because we'll be back in about 2 minutes to get into it. But that is it for us on the day. I want to thank you for joining us. We will be back here tomorrow to get into it. And we hope to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.